I'd like to introduce LWV North County San Diego President Ann Olmstead.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. We have a momentous thing going on in California right now, and that is our housing situation. Miles Pomeroy, who is the chair of the San Diego League Public Policy Committee, and Mary Thompson, who is super league member, but also the North County representative to the Public Policy Committee, are here tonight to give you an overview of what the situation is in San Diego County. Our housing shortage, our pricing, everything is out of kilter now. The housing action policy that has been created by the Public Policy Committee is going to help our league be able to respond to some of the situations that are arising and will arise. So with that, let me take it straight to Mary Thompson will begin. Mary, it's all yours.
Thank you so much, Ann, and welcome everyone. I am Mary Thompson, and I am joining Miles Pomeroy, who, as Ann said, is the chair of our Public Policy Committee. If you give me just a moment, I'm going to go ahead and share screen so we can get right into our program. So, as Ann said, we are, this presentation is to give a view of actually a systemic problem. It's gone beyond a crisis. It's a systemic problem in our region. And we will be spotlighting the housing action policy. The presentation actually runs about 35 minutes or so, and that's going to give us plenty of time to address your questions at the end. As Kim said, use the Q&A button, and you can log your questions at any time, and we definitely will address them at the end. We thank you for taking time this evening to be part of this educational session. Meeting tonight on the anniversary of George Floyd's killing is poignant. That event, along with other disparities illuminated this past year, influenced the work of the team that Miles assembled. Miles, with vast experience in community development and urban planning, formed this team of league members. Susan Baldwin, a retired planner with SANDAG, Jamie Hagee, active duty military, Mary Lydon, former planning commissioner for the city of San Diego, Meg Thode, diversity director for the North County League, and me. My housing background came from study and dialogue on affordable housing with the San Diego Deliberation Network in 2017-2018. Miles will tell you that this was a whole team effort, and I can tell you it was a great experience to work together. Tonight is a sort of a bookend to a session that was held with both leagues on February 6th. In that session, we gathered ideas and comments and thoughts from the membership, and the team has since incorporated the membership's ideas and framed them around goals and assembled actions. Our goals were to integrate into a single platform league positions from national, state, and local levels. We focused on the emerging regional housing issues, and we were attempting to address the critical goals of sustainability and equity. We began with the San Diego League's housing position, which was adopted in 1993. The North County League had no housing position. Miles will tell you that much has changed since that document in 1993. The team believes that an action policy can be integrated with existing positions to meet the dynamic changes of housing in our area. And the policy is intended to serve both leagues as the 18 cities and the unincorporated areas of San Diego County grapple with growth, sustainability, and equity. Miles, over to you.
Thank you, Mary. So what has changed since our San Diego housing policy was adopted in 1993? Well, certainly we've had steady regional population growth in that time. We now have a major housing crisis, especially for low and middle income levels. We've seen a steady increase in housing prices, and in fact, they've exploded in the last year. We now have a homelessness crisis, and we've seen short-term vacation rental units emerge as a major issue in the last few years. We know we've also lost thousands of single-room occupancy hotel rooms, most of those in downtown San Diego. The estimate is as high as 10,000. And we've lost thousands of other previously existing affordable housing units, and those include both those that are naturally affordable, meaning that by virtue of their location or condition, the rents on those units have always been relatively low and relatively affordable. And we've also lost thousands of other affordable units that had been specifically restricted to low and very low income occupancy as a result of the funding mechanism that was used to finance them or other regulatory restrictions. So this graphic shows the relationship between housing, transportation, and employment, and it really is similar to what this slide is trying to illustrate with respect to similar to being like the gears of a clock or watch. How housing and transportation and employment are all directly related to one another, and the layout of our housing and land use patterns does determine our transportation pattern. Our low density suburban form of development not only makes automobiles the primary mode of transportation in San Diego, but also directly impacts housing costs. And of course, employment drives housing demand. So what is the relationship between housing, transportation, and employment? This slide is showing that we want to locate new affordable housing in transit corridors and in proximity to major employment centers. So both leagues adopted a new transportation action policy in January of 2021. Our new housing action policy will complement the new transportation action policy, and both of them are intended to work in tandem to guide league advocacy on housing and transportation issues. So the regional housing action policy is intended to create a platform of league positions. It identifies emerging regional housing issues, and it uses the California Housing Element Law and the Regional Housing Needs Assessment to measure progress. And as you'll see in shortly, nearly 99,000 units of affordable housing are needed by the year 2029. And the policy integrates with the goals of sustainability and equity.
So I'm sure as league members, you know that league positions are reached after study and consensus. They enable the league to advocate for matters in the public good. Many positions are vertical, which means they can be applied to advocacy in a top-down way. Action policies build on leagues' already adopted positions at the national, state, and local levels. Those positions remain in place and are incorporated by reference. Our leagues have adopted 2 other action policies. Actually, we developed them. The homelessness action policy, which was adopted by the state league, and the Regional Transportation Action Policy, as Miles said, which both leagues adopted in January of this year. A regional housing action policy continues in that pattern.
So our housing action policy lays out 8 goals. You can see them listed here, and I'm going to share the screen and bring up our housing action policy so that you can see it, and hopefully you can all see this. So I'm going to just scroll through it briefly, and you can see we have our 8 major goals. And following that, we have the league positions at the US level, the state level, and the local level that relate to housing. And there are links here. So for example, if we click on the homelessness action policy, it brings it up. There it is. And it works the same way with all of the other positions that are here. So just continuing to scroll down, you can see the various state level positions, LWVC, League of Women Voters California, and our local position. This is the local position on housing that was developed in 1993. So all of those links are there. And we also, in addition, we have these matrices that allow us to relate our positions to the various goals. So for example, if we click on 1A, 1A is the US position on meeting basic human needs. And there is a section on housing here if we scroll down far enough, and the content there relates to this goal of creating a sufficient affordable housing supply. And it works the same way with all of the other positions that are referenced under each goal. And also under each goal, we have a variety of actions that are listed. So the very first one is to create a league housing committee to implement the actions in this document. And we'll be talking more about that later in the presentation. But you can see there's a lot of actions that are listed under each goal. I'm not going to dwell on them now because there's just too many and we don't have that much time, and we want to save the bulk of the meeting for questions and discussion. But I wanted to share the format of this with you. So we do have a lot of actions that are specific to each of the 8 goals. And Mary and I encourage you to click on this and read it at your leisure. And it really is intended, it's designed as a document that can be read online with all of these embedded links. But of course, you do have the option of printing it out too. But if you print it out, you don't get the benefit of the embedded links. So I'm going to stop sharing now, and we can go back to the presentation.
Give me 1 second. Thanks, Miles. So according to a really great utility called Bill Search, which is through the California legislature, there are over 400 current bills concerning housing in the legislature. These are some of the high-profile bills which Miles and I have categorized by topic. And if you'll bear with me 1 second, I'm going to zoom in so we can take a little closer look at this categorization and maybe some of these bills. So this first topic, legal and bonds, these bills are concerning amending the Constitution, state funding, and the relationship between state and local laws. This next one, density and building types, these bills are about new specifics about types like ADUs, accessory dwelling units, and units per lot. Then there are bills that are regarding the use of retail and office sites. These bills would allow changes in zoning due to the changing use patterns which have been discovered and revealed during the pandemic, using retail space or office space for housing perhaps. And then bills regarding fire-prone areas. These bills reflect the lessons learned through the terrible fire seasons that we've lived through. And then these bills relate to streamlined development process. I'm not going to go into details on all of these, but we could sure send you links to all of this later. So the State League closely monitors this legislation. Currently, the State League, LWVC, has written in support on 4 bills, these 4. Let's take a look at those in a little closer. So SCA 2, that's Senate Constitutional Amendment 2. This would repeal a 1950 constitutional requirement that public housing be put to a vote. This appealed then to racist fears regarding integration of white communities. Another bill that the League has written in support of is SB 8, prohibits local actions that reduce housing capacity. It actually extends the Housing Crisis Act of 2019 5 more years through 2030. 2 other bills the state has taken a position on. SB 9 would allow cities and counties to ease barriers and allow single-family lot splits through staff approvals without public hearings. And SB 10 would authorize local governments to permit up to 10 units per parcel in transit zones without the CEQA, that's the Environmental Quality Act process. There's likely more developments to come before the session ends this fall. For example, SB 7 was put on this chart, but it was actually signed by the governor and passed last Friday, the 21st. I'm hoping you'll want to learn more about this, and we're going to have an opportunity Anne can tell us more about later. There is a workshop at the upcoming virtual state convention. The workshop is on LWVC housing position and how to use it. That workshop is on Wednesday, June 9th at 5 p.m. and I'm sure Anne's going to give us more details. Over to you, Miles.
Thank you, Mary. So this chart defines what we mean by low income, very low income, and extremely low income, and it relates to family size. And this chart not only defines what those are, but is also used as a basis for determining eligibility for various affordable housing programs. So for example, if we take a family of 4, if their income is $97,000 or less, they are considered low income. That is 80% of AMI, which stands for area median income. Some housing programs use the 60% level of area median income as the eligibility point. And if your income is for a family of 4, 72,720, then you are eligible for programs that use that level. If your income is 60,600 and you're a family of four, you are considered very low income, and there are some housing programs that are specifically targeted at that level. And finally, if your income is 36,350 for a four-person household, you are considered at extremely low income. And there are some housing programs that are targeted at that level too. And some of the programs actually set aside some units for low income at the 80% or 60% level, and also require that some of the units be set aside for very low income or even extremely low income. So the League wants to be able to advocate for more affordable housing, and we do that by influencing the creation of governmental policy. So in order to do that, we need to be able to influence our state and local legislative bodies. The State Department of Housing and Community Development, which administers and enforces the housing element law, and we want to interact with our regional planning agency in San Diego, which is SANDAG, the San Diego Association of Governments, and we want to be able to monitor the various housing elements of our general plans, and also the other elements of our general plans which relate to housing, such as land use and transportation, because those elements also influence where housing can be located and the cost. And finally, SANDAG has published their process for determining the regional housing needs assessment, and that link is there.
Thanks,
Mary,
Miles. Yeah, so there's a relationship, as Miles indicated, between HCD, that's the California Department of Housing, and SANDAG, which we know. And this slide depicts that the Regional Housing Needs Assessment, or RHNA, the process and the relationship. HCD begins with the demographic population information from the California Department of Finance. They use a formula to calculate a figure for each region, roughly counties, but not necessarily. And that formula includes growth projections, vacancy rates, overcrowding, among other things. SANDAG uses its own demographic figures to calculate what it believes is the regional housing need, and then coordinates with HCD. They take into account factors such as equity adjustments. That is, among the four income levels that you saw on Miles' slide, they look at that by jurisdiction and then against the county, and arrive at a final figure to equitably distribute low income in the county. This final figure is the Regional Housing Needs Assessment, or RHNA. SANDAG then allocates the housing need amongst all the jurisdictions to come up with a RHNA plan. Where we stand right now for the sixth cycle is that SANDAG had allocated the RHNA goals to all jurisdictions throughout the region. 4 cities appealed the allocations: Coronado, Imperial Beach, Lemon Grove, and Solana Beach. There were various accommodations and adjustments, and then the final RHNA plan was submitted and accepted by HCD last July 2020. Now, jurisdictions across the county are adopting their housing elements into their general plans and submitting them to HCD to show compliance.
So this slide shows what the adopted RHNA goals are for each of the various jurisdictions in San Diego County, and you can see that if we add up the very low income, the low income, and the moderate income, it all adds up to about 99,000 affordable housing units that are needed by the year 2029 when the sixth RHNA cycle ends.
So how did we do in the fifth cycle? In the fifth cycle, among all income levels, in San Diego County issued permits for about 75,000 housing units. If you can see my cursor, that's this column. Against a RHNA goal of about 162,000 units, that's this column, roughly equaling about a 47% attainment. That score is weighted by the scores in the various income levels. For example, we built about 92% of the goal for above moderate income level housing, whereas we built only about 10% of the goal for very low income levels. Miles will now look at the other key jurisdictions.
Thank you, Mary. So this chart shows how the city of San Diego did for the last housing elements cycle, which ran from 2010 to 2020. And you can see with the with HCD's report on the right that the city of San Diego achieved only about 11% of its goal for very low income, almost 16% for low income, virtually nothing at the moderate income level, only 34 units in 10 years. And it came close to meeting its above moderate income goal at 97.2%. And the bar chart on the left shows how the city of San Diego did by year. The green is the very low income production. The tan is the low income production. And the blue color is the moderate income. And we only see a tiny sliver only in the year 2019 because there were just so few moderate income units produced in that 10-year time frame. So now we're showing 5 North County cities: Carlsbad, Encinitas, Escondido, Oceanside, and San Marcos, and how they did in meeting their assigned RHNA goals in that 2010 to 2020 period. And if you look at these overall, you can see that without fail, all of them fell far short in achieving their very low income goals. Carlsbad achieved almost 40% of its low income goal, but Encinitas was only at 7.6%, Escondido 11.6%, Oceanside at 15.9%, and San Marcos at 14.5%. And the numbers are similar at the moderate income level, but interestingly, 3 jurisdictions more than met their goal on above moderate income. And look at San Marcos, they more than doubled their above moderate income goal, which was 1,613 units, and they actually produced 3,501. Similarly, Carlsbad met 129.8% of its above moderate income goal, and Encinitas met 115.5% of their above moderate income goal. So above moderate income is doing fairly well. The low income, very low income, and moderate income categories, not so well. And this chart shows the explosion in housing prices, which has occurred. There's been a lot of media attention given to the increase in excuse me, sales prices for the last year. And you can see this chart on the left shows that the median home price has increased from about 590,000 in March of 2020 to 680,000 in March of this year, and it's undoubtedly even higher now. And the numbers on the right indicate what rental rates are for a 1-bedroom apartment and a 2-bedroom apartment in the various jurisdictions in the region. And you can see, if you look at the numbers, the lowest rents are in El Cajon for a 1-bedroom. That is at $1,350 a month, and a 2-bedroom is $660 a month. And the highest rents are in Coronado, right at the top, fittingly, which is $2,550 for a 1-bedroom, and $3,170 for a 2-bedroom. And the other percentages show the month-to-month variation. So from March to April, or I believe this is actually between February and March. And the other column shows the year-to-year change, March of 2020 to March of 2021. So we do have a housing crisis, and as you can see, as you've seen, we're not meeting our housing goals in any income category. Countywide, if you add up the percentages which are being met for very low and moderate income housing, it adds up to about 38%. And as we've seen, very little is being built at the middle, or really the moderate and very low income levels. Mary, back to you.
Yeah, wow. So a problem. We are recommending the formation of a regional housing committee. We know that housing is a regional issue. It doesn't exist in just one jurisdiction, and there's a shortage of affordable housing at all parts of the region. This new committee should have representation from members of both leagues. We're looking for volunteers to join the new committee, but a background in housing is not necessary. It's a great opportunity to learn about housing policy and legislation, how housing decisions are made and who makes them, why we have a housing shortage, and possible solutions. The committee will use the action policy as a guide, so we're not starting from scratch, to monitor local actions and to recommend advocacy statements by both leagues. If you're interested, and we hope that you are, we urge you to contact Miles or me at these email addresses. Over to you, Miles.
Thank you, Mary. So just to wrap up, we showed this slide at the beginning of the presentation, and we're now at the point where our housing action policy has been adopted by both leagues. It's in effect, and we can now use it as a basis for providing league testimony at various governmental bodies, and we can use it as a basis for taking positions on various housing issues. And as Mary just said, we are anxious to form a regional housing committee to pursue implementation of all of the many actions in this housing action policy. So with that, let's open it up to questions and discussion.
So the first question is from Mary Reese, and she is not finding the document on the San Diego League website. And she also wants to know where the recording of this meeting will be posted.
So I believe I asked Kim to put the link to the document in the chat, and hopefully she did that, has done that.
It's there.
Oh, okay, good.
Yes.
And Kim can probably answer as to where the document can be, the recording can be found.
Yes, so on our website, lwvsandiego.org, if you just go to events and then click on event videos, and I'll type that in the chat as well.
Thank you. All right, Jane Andrews says the RHNA process seems central to the effort to assure more housing. Can you explain what consequences the State Department of Housing and Community Development can exert if a jurisdiction does not meet the goals?
Miles, you want to take that?
I'll take that. And I think we have Susan Baldwin here too, so she might want to chime in on this because she worked integrally with the RHNA housing process when she was at SANDAG. But the State Department of Housing and Community Development has been taking a harder stance with local jurisdictions who are reluctant to change their housing elements to achieve their RHNA goals. We've seen that with Encinitas in North County. And they've also taken a harder line with other jurisdictions. They've gone to court. They can deny the availability of local transportation monies, but Susan might want to elaborate on that.
So, I mean, the RHNA process, and it has changed somewhat, but it's in the past, and I think even now, it's really focused on more on planning than it is on production. So the cities have to make sure that they have adequate sites to take care of the RHNA numbers that they're assigned. And that's what they do in the housing element. So whether or not because the focus is on planning because it's a housing element and the cities don't build housing. So the focus of the housing element is really about planning, which the cities have control over. I don't know if that helps.
And
one thing I'd like to add is that for the very low and low income RHNA numbers, cities have to identify multifamily zoned land. So they have to identify sites that are, depending on the size of the city, most of the cities have to identify sites that allow 30 dwelling units per acre to meet their very low and low income needs.
Right. Okay, Jane Andrews has a follow-up question. What role can the League play in monitoring the RHNA process in local and regional jurisdictions?
Well, the Housing Action Policy recommends that we actually take an active role in monitoring what each jurisdiction is doing throughout the region in developing their RHNA numbers and implementing their housing elements. And that would be a primary responsibility of the Regional Housing Committee that we're hoping to create.
Miles, and that might take the form of some of the work we do currently, which is monitoring council sessions and so forth, and then speaking up when there is a question on the table about a particular parcel or a particular development, citing again our positions, our policies, but it's really watching and speaking.
Another thing that I think the League could do is when the cities, they can follow along as the cities prepare their housing elements. And then when they submit them to the state, Department of Housing and Community Development, also known as HCD, the state usually doesn't find the housing elements in compliance on the first pass. So reviewing the letters that the cities get from the state would be a good exercise to undertake as well, to make sure, because it helps you understand what the issues are and what cities are responsible for doing.
Okay, the next question. What do you think are the incentives? What happened to my question? I lost it. Oh, there you go. What do you think are the incentives and consequences that encourage the development of more low and moderate income housing?
Well, there are a variety of incentives out there. The density bonus law is one, and that provides an additional increase in allowable density above and beyond what would be allowed under the zoning that would otherwise be applicable if the developer agrees to set aside a certain percentage of units as affordable at specified affordability levels. And there is a state statute that's been in effect for many years that requires local jurisdictions to offer a density bonus program. And most jurisdictions now have local ordinances that actually implement it. Another one that has gotten a lot of attention in recent years has been companion units. So the state has passed a number of statutes in the last several years to make it easier to build these. These are also known as accessory dwelling units or granny flats, and they're intended to be like a small unit in the backyard of your single family house. And the term granny flat comes from the popular notion that maybe your grandmother could live back there, but they can also be rented out to others and serve as a source of income. And several jurisdictions in the San Diego region have now passed ordinances that make it easier to build these units without requiring parking or minimizing setback requirements. So we're seeing a significant increase now in those kinds of units. And as we saw on the chart that Mary showed regarding the various bills that have been introduced in the legislature, some of those bills would make further changes to the density bonus program or allow small scale multifamily housing in what has traditionally been single family zones. So for example, duplexes or townhomes, things along those lines could potentially be allowed in single family zones if some of these bills pass. Excuse me. And also there are a couple of bills that have been introduced that would make it easier for jurisdictions to change their zoning to allow multifamily residential in areas that were zoned commercial for either retail or office use, because we've seen there's been a significant contraction in demand for both retail and office over the last year with the pandemic.
Okay. Jane Andrews asks, can you be more specific about what you think the housing committee might do? Mary, you've already addressed that to a certain extent, but is there anything else you, either of you or Susan, wanted to add to that description of what the committee might do?
I will say they'll be busy. There's 18 jurisdictions in the county, not to mention the unincorporated areas. So if you conceive of watching the housing elements in each of those, the correspondence between HCD and the city, and monitoring performance, there's a lot of work to be done and a lot of eyes on.
Yes, very
So
true.
I'd like to add something. I was noticing in the slides that Carlsbad had done, I think it was, what was it, almost 40% of their low income need. And I believe that's because Carlsbad has an inclusionary housing ordinance. And so that's something that the league could advocate for, because, and I don't know what the number is now. When I was working, there were 11 out of the 19 jurisdictions that had an inclusionary housing ordinance. Inclusionary housing being, you know, when a project is built, a certain percentage of those units have to be set aside and made affordable to low or very low income people. So, you know, so there are a number of jurisdictions that do not have those ordinances. And like, there's one example I think that's interesting. In the city of La Mesa, there's a 900 unit project that is being proposed through a specific plan. It's called the Alvarado Specific Plan, and it's on the south side of Interstate 8. And the city of La Mesa does not have an inclusionary ordinance. So there's really no, you know, there's no requirement that any of those units be affordable. And so that's a very concrete action that the league could, you know, work on trying to get cities to adopt, that don't have them, to adopt inclusionary ordinances.
And
Thank you.
that is one of the recommendations in our housing action policy.
Thank you. Karen Sutton asks, what are the most significant obstacles to the cities achieving their RHNA goals? Yeah.
I think a significant obstacle is NIMBYism, where many homeowners, residents are reluctant to see new housing built in their communities because they fear that it could create additional problems with respect to traffic congestion or overcrowding, or somehow reduce the overall quality of life in their community. And so we've seen state bills that have been introduced to try to address this, but there are other factors at play as well in addition to that. And one is that land is becoming increasingly less available throughout the region. And for example, in the city of San Diego, there's very little buildable vacant land left. And so we're anticipating that in coming years, the vast majority of our residential development will be in the form of redevelopment or infill, which will be on land that is already used for housing or for some other use, but could be utilized more intensively than it is now. And we're expecting to see more of that. And I think another obstacle, at least in the past year, has been a significant increase in the cost of construction materials. They've all gone up, particularly steel and wood, lumber. So all of these things are obstacles or impediments that need to be overcome or addressed. And another one occurred to me, and that is that a number of jurisdictions have fairly complex or cumbersome approval processes for approving new housing, and so there's a need to simplify or streamline the approval process. So the city of San Diego, I know, for example, has made some significant strides along those lines, and some other jurisdictions are trying to do that as well. And we've seen on the chart that Mary showed with all of the bills that several of those bills are geared towards streamlining as well.
I'd like to add something to that, and that is that in terms of meeting the above moderate or moderate income goals, I think the things that Miles mentioned are absolutely true. I think in terms of meeting low and very low income goals, the only two ways that housing, new housing that is built that is affordable to lower income households is if there's subsidy money or and or a regulatory measure such as inclusionary housing. No market rate builder will ever build, even though they talk as if they're going to, let them build and housing will be affordable. It won't be affordable to low or very low income people without a subsidy.
Thank you. All right, next question. Has anyone figured out how many more housing units became available as COVID killed older people, if any? I've never thought of that before.
Wow.
I don't think anybody has.
I have not seen any numbers on that.
Well,
Can I just add one thing to the end of my other, what I was saying about regulatory measures and money? It's also political will.
Yes.
Political will to do something, in other words, to adopt an inclusionary ordinance. That's a barrier. That's an obstacle. Lack of political will.
Another question, do programs consider anything other than income for help programs? What about low income, but a lot of assets?
Susan, you're probably more familiar with that.
I didn't understand the question. I'm sorry. Could you repeat the question?
Sure. Do programs consider anything other than income for help programs? What about low income, but a lot of assets? Like some people may own a lot of property that they picked up years ago, but their income is low now. Would they be eligible for our low income category because they actually have a lot of assets? I think that's the question.
Okay. I don't know how people are income qualified, but I suppose, there are always loopholes that people can, qualify for things that they shouldn't. But I don't know. I would think that, programs when they qualify people would ask that question, but honestly, I don't know.
I don't. Does anybody know?
Well,
Nor do
some of our reference documents in the back of the action policy are HUD documents. That's Housing and Urban Development. And I think that if there is any kind of means standard, it's probably coming from them. And we might find it in those references.
Okay. What organizations are most active in the county in advocating for more affordable housing?
Well, the biggest one is probably the San Diego Housing Federation. They've been active in San Diego since the early 90s, I believe. They have a full-time staff, and they do an excellent job of advocating for affordable housing throughout the region. And they also do a good job of putting on workshops and seminars for people who want to learn more about affordable housing programs. So you might want to go onto their website. But Susan might be aware of some others.
I want to give a shout out to a very small entity right here in Encinitas called Keys for Homes. They are small but mighty. And I think they almost, with a very tiny, I mean microscopically tiny staff, mobilized people to speak regarding the housing element in Encinitas. And I swear, I don't think we'd be where we are if it hadn't been for some of their work over the past 3 to 4 years.
Susan, did you have something? Thank you.
Well, I know when I was working on housing solutions, it was part of Complete Communities for the city of San Diego. The Environmental Health Coalition and the City Heights CDC were both advocating for more affordable housing. So, and there used to be an affordable housing coalition, but that hasn't been active in many, many years. I think some of us feel that there's sort of a need for more advocacy. And I think one thing that I discovered in my long tenure working at SANDAG on affordable housing, I remember the city of Poway actually had a campaign that they did for several years where they did PR, they worked with affordable housing developers, they educated the council, they had articles in the newspaper to gain acceptance of affordable housing. But then what happens is, unfortunately, you can't stop educating, because the next council comes on board and they don't know anything about affordable housing. And for example, in Poway, after that incredible effort where I think they were very successful and there were several affordable housing projects built by nonprofits that were, that the community embraced. But then there was a project that was proposed by Habitat for Humanity for veterans, and it was turned down. I mean, and I don't know all the details. I just know that it was turned down. And I remember thinking, oh my gosh, what happened, so I guess the lesson I learned in that is you can never stop educating people about the need and about what affordable housing is. And, this presentation is great, because I think it would be great to have the league, maybe pick a couple of council members in different cities that were maybe doing worse than other cities and go meet with the council people. Well, I guess you'd have to do Zoom now, but maybe soon be able to sit down across the table from them and say, what are you doing about affordable housing? And just get them to talk about it.
Thank you, Susan. Okay, Gary Nesson asks, is there some connection to increased density and construction of affordable units? Increased density increases land value without some connection.
Well, there is a relationship there. Density allows the per unit development costs to be spread out among more units. So up to a point, greater density does allow lower development costs per unit. So there is a relationship there with lowering housing costs. But once you reach a certain point, then with respect to density, then a different construction type is mandated. You need to go to all steel as opposed to lumber. and steel is more expensive. So that would increase housing costs beyond any cost savings that you would achieve by reducing the cost per unit, if that makes sense.
Thank you. The next question, are you optimistic about getting affordable housing in either the Midway Development Project or the Navwar project? Can the league advocate on this?
Well, can I answer that question?
Of course, I thought
So-
you might.
Yeah, so I don't know if any of you are interested. I actually wrote an op-ed about the sports arena site a few weeks ago. I guess it was in April. And I advocated for requiring whatever number of units were built there, whatever it ends up being, which I think at one point it was about 2,000 units, that those units should be built so that they are affordable to all income levels, and that 40% be in the lower income category, 20% in the moderate, and 40% in the above moderate, which sort of generally is the proportion of the RHNA numbers region-wide and for the city of San Diego. I said, this is a city-owned site. It's 8 acres, and it would be an incredible opportunity to create a balanced community. So, but right now, the only thing that the city would require is they have an inclusionary ordinance. Unfortunately, the inclusionary ordinance right now, because of changes that were made to it in the end of 2019, only requires 2% of the units that are built right now to be affordable. And they phased in over 5 years the percentage. So it won't be 10% until 4 years from now. So that's a pretty paltry number of units. Well, 2% is a travesty, a tragedy, but even 10% isn't very many compared to the need, which is basically 40% of the unit need for the RHNA numbers is in the very low and low income categories. And so, unless something radical happened, unless there was really a push, and the league could lead the way or lead the charge, and there would probably be other people who would come along. It's the maximum that you're going to get in those projects is 10%. And they could end up paying an in lieu fee and not building any, because the council, the inclusionary ordinance, which I thought should have had if you are a project of a certain size, you have to build those units, but that's not part of the requirements. Like if you have a project of 100 units, I thought you or 50 units, you should have to build, but the current ordinance doesn't require that. Sorry, I'm on my soapbox.
Yes, I
So
would say that
that question was also asking about the Navwar.
Well, I'm talking about both of them.
No,
I didn't write about Navwar, but the only thing.
I know, but I wanted to talk
Yeah.
more specifically about that.
Okay.
So the Navy is a federal agency, which means that they can do whatever they want, and they do not have to abide by local zoning as a matter of law. But this is at a very early stage, their proposal for 10,000 units, and one would think that there would be some significant discussions between the city of San Diego, the port, SANDAG, and the Navy about what will ultimately be developed there and how many of those units might be affordable. And when those kinds of discussions begin to take place, that would be an opportunity for the league to weigh in and hopefully our new regional housing committee to play a major role in helping to shape what ultimately happens there and how many of those units might end up being potentially affordable.
Thank you, Miles. Next question. How does special needs housing fit into the League's housing action policy, specifically housing for mentally challenged individuals?
Well, that is addressed in the housing action policy, and it's also addressed in the homelessness action policy, as Ann knows, because she was in charge of the committee that developed that one. There are a number of affordable housing programs out there that do make allowances for special needs housing, and it's simple. Part of it is working with the various not-for-profits that do that kind of housing and interacting with them, and perhaps getting them in touch with the appropriate officials at the various local jurisdictions and at the state level who provide the funding for those kinds of programs, and at the federal level too.
All right. Population is decreasing due to birth rates below replacement level and decreased immigration. I read about houses being leveled and the land under them turned into parks. That clearly is not happening here yet. Now that people will be working from home more, people are moving out of the big cities and into smaller towns. That may relieve things in California some. That's a very optimistic approach. Let's hope there is some accuracy in that statement. We hope. Any comments from any of the panelists?
Well, the SANDAG regional growth forecast is still forecasting a significant growth in population to the year 2050 in the San Diego region, and I think the current number is around 800,000 or so continued growth. But they update their numbers every few years, and as the next update will be taking these trends into consideration to the extent that they might not have been fully taken into consideration in the most recent forecast. And that's not to say that they weren't, because a lot of effort goes into developing these population forecasts, and SANDAG does generally have a pretty accurate record of their with respect to their forecasts. So right now they are still planning for that 800,000 population increase to the year 2050, and they're basing their updated regional transportation plan on that occurring.
Very good. All right. Jane Andrews says this has been a terrific discussion and very informative. I would like to second that. I have never heard a clearer explanation of RHNA. Mary, bravo to you. And Miles, your explanation of the graphs and how it all interrelates was brilliant. I truly think this has been just about the best housing forum that I have ever attended. Yay. Thank you, everyone. And then Mary Reese says, closed military bases should be converted to low-income housing. We paid for them. They have a lot of infrastructure already. El Toro is an example, and instead they make parks. Any comments?
Well, it's hard to imagine that the Navy or Marines would be giving up any of their facilities in San Diego, but it's not to say that it's beyond the realm of possibility. When the Naval Training Center was repurposed for housing, there was a small sliver of the Marine Corps Training Center at that time that was phased out and became a part of the Liberty Station development that we have now. But right now, it's hard to see the Marines abandoning Camp Pendleton or the Navy abandoning any of their facilities. But again, it's not beyond the realm of possibility that that could happen 10, 20 years down the road.
I will comment that we were so fortunate to have Jamie Hagee on our team, an active duty military. And she spoke very movingly about maybe if the land is completely deserted by the government, perhaps then, but any kind of commingling, she was very pessimistic about that working with missions and so forth. It was just great to have her perspective on the team.
Thank you. Well, this seems to be the end of the questions, and we are coming to the end of the forum. There's two things I would like to mention to everybody. At the convention, there is also going to be a workshop on homelessness. As you all know, homelessness is greatly tied to scarcity and cost of housing. The two workshops are on the same day, June the 8th. The homelessness project is 12 to 1:30, and the housing workshop is from 5 to 6:30. You will again hear about RHNA during that housing workshop, and you will learn even more because we all need to be better educated about housing. I want to thank Mary and Miles so much. You put together when I asked for an overview of housing in the county, I did not know what you were going to come up with, but you both did a wonderful job. And I am deeply impressed and so happy that our members were exposed to this. I suspect that the word will go out and a lot of people are going to be looking at the video of this meeting. And Susan, thank you for joining us. You enriched our discussion very much. Thank you. So I thank all of you.
Thanks, everyone. Good night.
Thank you. Good
All right,
night.
thank you, Ann.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so much.